Right, I just want to make sure that I have audio on here. I do have sound. I can see that feedback. I will wait a couple of minutes to let some people drop in here. And then we'll get to talking about everything that happened this week. And again, if you have any feedback on my audio, if it needs to be, if you need me to raise my volume, lower my volume, whatever, just drop me a message right there and we will get started. I'll also say that a couple of minutes, we will have only for a little bit of time, not too much, but for enough time, we will have, I can't do anything about that. I have a new webcam, so I do apologize for that. I can't do anything about that. I might actually be able to, I have a new webcam though, so I do apologize if the graphics on this are shoddy. I can't do anything about that. Unfortunately, I also don't have that much lighting in here. Kind of problematic that this is the room I have to record in, but that could also be that I got a light right behind me, but I do apologize for that on here, but we will make do with what we have. And we'll get into talking about everything with this week, Kentucky Derbies, Arkansas Derbies. We'll talk about that virtual Kentucky Derby if you want to. I wasn't really super enthusiastic about it, but I know it was a big story, so we will talk about that as well as everything else that happened this weekend. So we will get my co-host Eric on here in a couple of moments, and he will give some of his opinions on what happened this weekend. And again, I do apologize for anyone who's dropping in here. I do apologize for the webcam. This is a shoddy webcam. I don't have, it's a new laptop than what I've been using it on. I'm not going to make a new live stream on it, but if it is preferable, I will go back to using the original computer that I had used for my other live shows, which had a better camera on it. Actually, let me get Eric on here. Just give me a second. Let me get Eric on here. For anyone who's just dropping in, I'm just about to get my co-host on here, Eric. He was the person who produced the fantasy preview and the second division of the Arkansas Derby. So the Nadal Charlotte, or the Nadal Wells Bayou Silver Prospector King Guillermo Arkansas Derby prep, as well as the fantasy preview. So there is those. If you want to go check those out, just I don't know why there would be any super urge to go get that, but go look at those. But just if you want to see that we don't sound like complete idiots, then you can go take a look at those if you have not already. One thing that I will say while we're waiting for Eric to get on here, I do want to make an announcement. Next week, I have been in communication. I don't know how clear I've made this, but next week I will be having the first woman jockey who ran in the Kentucky Derby, Diane Crump. She will be joining the podcast next week. I don't know how many of you know I'm from the state of Connecticut, but Diane is also is also from the state of Connecticut. So something that's near and dear to me. Now, give me a second. I will get Eric on here, and we will get into talking about. I'll let Eric discuss some of his stuff for the moment. And again, I do apologize about this camera situation. I should probably, next time out, I will do that. I actually don't know why it looks that bad. All right, so making his live stream debut, this is my co-host, Eric. You and I haven't had the best couple of segments, but good week for us this week, and a couple of hunch picks. Got shut out of a couple of trifectas, but a lot of horses in the top four. So thanks for stopping by for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I mean, my yesterday's picks weren't so hot for the Philly race, but today I went on the races we covered, at least on the podcast. I went 4 for 5. The only loss was going against Nadal, who, if you listened, you would know I was pretty high on. Nonetheless, I just liked Farmington Road a little bit better. So we did good today, thankfully, in terms of giving out names on the podcast.
So yeah, obviously you have some big opinions, and before we talk about some of the obvious superstars, the charlatans, the Nadals, and obviously the By My Standards, I just want you to kind of hit on some of your the shots that you took with horses like Finnick the Fierce and Farmington Road.
Yeah. I mean, those kind of paid off pretty well. Finnick the Fierce really came running late, and if you listen to the YouTube preview I did, I said this horse is as consistent can be, and he ran a huge third. For a second, I thought he was going to get up to win, and when I could tell Farmington was going to get there, I was rooting him on. I really wanted to see him get up and score, but I made a joke, a comment right after the race that this horse is going to be perfect to complete a trifecta at 88-1 in the Kentucky Derby in September and make a lot of people very rich if they notice the trend. But he's really underrated, and I mean the connections probably don't go a long way considering they're a little lesser known. But he ran huge. Farmington Road, I think Javier Castellano probably moved a little too early on him. I liked the position. My big complaint was how far back he was last time. He was closer today. I just think that Castellano got to work on him a little too early and went a little too wide for him to be competitive at the end.
Now, I know on the actual podcast that we have on this, Eric and I were both not necessarily praising, but giving Tom's D'Etat, who coming into this weekend was the leader of the older males, all the praise that he deserved, and that's well deserved. He's run some Tom's D'Etat's run some really nice races over the course of the past couple of months. But with that win by My Standards today, I'm not really sure that this division is not going to have a couple of horses that are going to be banging at each other throughout the year. That was a very nice win by My Standards, and I know you said that barring a loss by My Standards this weekend, that you were prepared to give By My Standards the division if you were able to come through this weekend, which he did. And he did very, very emphatically.
He was super impressive, and looking at the group he beat, all the horses you would hope run, maybe minus Combatant and Trophy Chaser, the big horses ran, and he just had the best race. And full credit to Warriors Charge too. That horse ran a dynamite race. By My Standards was just a little bit better. And listen, if this group of older handicap horses can stay healthy or get back to health like Game Winner's trying to do, and if you combine that with the amazing 3-year-olds we've seen so far, we're getting ready for a huge Breeders' Cup Classic if all goes well. By My Standards is just a good horse. There were a lot of people saying he was just a fairgrounds horse. That's just not true. Like I said, on the podcast, he's only ran one bad race in his career, and that was the Kentucky Derby, which really was not his fault. He just had the worst trip imaginable. So he's a really classy horse, and I think he has a lot of improvement to do. I'm also going to say Mr. Freeze ran huge given the circumstances. Him and Tastis, Mr. Freeze did not get his ideal position, had to go wide on the turn, farther back than he definitely would like to be, and still ran a really credible third. So I was impressed by really the top 5 or 6 in this race.
I will throw that out there also. I'm not upset with Dale, but very good race for all four of those horses. And, just before we get to talking about, sorry about that. My connection dropped out. Aside from the winners, I know you kind of mentioned that a little bit with the Warriors Charge and Mr. Freeze and Tacitus, but aside from them, what were some of the other big performances you saw from horses that didn't win races today, and also from horses that were winners in stakes races that we haven't talked about yet, or non-stakes races at all?
Yeah, I was really impressed with King Guillermo. He rated really nicely. Sammy Camacho, I don't know if it was intended or not. I haven't been able to watch any of his works to tell if he's been trying to work off the pace or not, but he did a really nice job sitting off the pace today. And from the Tampa Bay Derby, you kind of just said that he needed the lead to be competitive, but that's definitely not the case. I just think he got an awesome trip. Nadal just flat out outran him today. And but seriously, that's a horse that if we considered the Kentucky Derby being today, we knew there was going to be a lot of early speed signed on. He would have had a legitimate shot if he could rate like that, and he'll have a legitimate shot going down the road in other races, knowing he's not one-dimensional. I already touched on Finnick the Fierce. Farmington Road, I didn't hate the race. I didn't think he got the best of tricks. Wells Bayou, a little disappointing to me, but I think he's better than that. I think that sure, it was a tough group. Sure, he probably didn't put his best foot forward, but I think he could run a lot better than that performance he put in today. Going back to Charlatan's division, I love Basin's race. I think Basin ran huge. I think Charlatan's just a freak of nature. I imagine for the next couple months I'm going to talk a lot about Charlatan, how just impressive that race was. It reminded me a lot of American Pharoah's Arkansas Derby win. Just how he looked, how he composed himself, a great horse. But Basin ran really good. I think Basin, maybe he's not a two-turn horse, but he ran his heart out, and it was a good run from Basin. I definitely hope they start searching for those 7 furlong races that I think he'll be more competitive in, and he'll definitely start putting in some stronger performances. And then in terms of the non-states races, the 2 we covered at least, I really loved Rushy's win in the allowance race, race 10. I think he's sure. His biggest loss was to Charlatan, and he's come back since, and he's just ran so nicely, and that was a really nice win in his first race outside of California. Candy Tycoon also ran a credible race for second. I think he'll be a hard-knocking horse as the year progresses. And then Endorsed, first start for Belmont, beat a really solid group. Pirates Punch, who's a stakes veteran, and Inkit, who's a stakes veteran. Endorsed beat them both, and he ran a really nice race. I was super impressed with him. Also, one other horse I got mentioned, Long Range Toddy. They changed up the tactics from his last couple races, made sure he was close to the lead, and he ran a good fourth. He's probably not going to win anything big down the road, but he'll try to compete in them and maybe hit the board in a couple of them.
Now, there's one other horse that I think it would be remiss not to mention with you on here. The really nice filly who starting off for a year probably definitely would not have been ready for the Kentucky Oaks, but with the definitely, we're going to see a lot of horses that are going to benefit off the fact that the Kentucky Derby's not run in May. So, and I think it's ultimately going to lead to more deeper horses down the road, but that's something we'll get to when we get to there. But Scolding for Steve Asmussen ran a really nice figure in that 2 race at Oaklawn today. And I know you and I were both in the times that we've been talking today, we're really high on her, and she's got big things for her. I know you've mentioned that Phoenix likes to swing big at auctions, and sometimes they strike out, but this looks like for once that they've got their hands on a horse that they haven't struck out yet with, at least in the runs that she's had.
She was super impressive, and I know a lot of people were definitely expecting that from her. Her work pattern was excellent. Obviously, probably a bit of an inflated purchase price, but she still ran outstandingly. Halfway down the backside, I could just tell her she was just letting her ears fly back and forth. She was just loving it out there. She was going so easily. And my big thing in terms of the Oaks is she's not necessarily a big bodied, rowdy looking filly, but obviously some horses outrun how they physically look. Her pedigree too maybe suggests she's probably going to be a little happier going shorter distances, like a mile or so. Carpe Diem hasn't had enough runners for me to make an assumption that he's a one-turn sire, but they've definitely been a little better going one turns. From my perspective, they seem pretty zippy. So I think she might be a sprinter, but who knows? There's obviously a lot of time. But listen, if she stays sprinting, I think that she'll be a prime contender for big races down the road. The Test, obviously the biggest, I'd say, female sprint race for the 3-year-olds every year. So that's the kind of race I would hope that they would point to.
And you've also
with this filly.
No offense. You've also not to cut you off right there, but you've also seen horses like Lady Secret going back really far in the past, but be able to run in races like the Test and be able to continue on to be able to do things at longer distances. I know it's different pedigree, but you've also seen that before.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. Yeah, for sure. I think, even Serengeti Empress, she won the Kentucky Oaks last year and then ran a really credible second behind Koseffi in the Test. So, that's a great point you make. Considering it's a mile and an eighth, I think that anything from 7 furlongs to a mile and an eighth, if you get the right setup, you could have a horse that's probably best going 7 furlongs. Like I personally think Golden will be. If she gets the right scenario, she'll be able to carry that speed longer. I mean, honestly, once again, like Serengeti Empress did in the Kentucky Oaks, she just got the right setup and it worked out for her. But yeah, no matter what distance she runs at, no matter the conditions, I think she's going to be a competitor. She is just a very talented filly. She did it super easily today, and I'm definitely excited to see her run next out.
Now, given the fact that there are some horses that we have yet to see at least come back with what you would have wanted to see, horses that are either on the shelf, have run earlier in the year, and they're in limbo with the fact that with the situation that we're in, or horses like, say, a Game Winner, who I know both you and I are very high on, specifically with this older division that looks to be a really deep division. The horses that we have seen, the By My Standards and the Tom's d'Etats, I know we mentioned that they are extremely talented, but where do you see those horses that are right now, for the moment, on the shelf? Where do you see those horses fitting in?
That's a good question. I think Game Winner, once he gets back, I think that he's going to be right up there. He needs this spot. I imagine that the Gold Cup at Santa Anita is probably what they're looking for with that horse, or maybe he's not ready for that. But I know he'll be ready this summer to run it. I'm very excited for that. Honestly, the older handicap division kind of had to just be redone this year from last year. We either had tons of retirements, or it was a weak group. There's no denying that last year. We touched on Game Winner. I think a horse like War of Will, I personally think he's more of a grass horse, but he obviously is very capable going to, the classic distances on the dirt. So he's one to watch out for. He's coming back either next week or a couple weeks from now. If Santa Anita gets back running, he'll be on the track on the grass, but he's a versatile horse. I think he's up there. If he can find his old form, he'll definitely be up there. But right now, honestly, the two that we've seen the most of, By My Standards and Tom's d'Etats, are the two I could put at the top, even with those other horses fully healthy. I'd say Game Winner is probably third for me. I honestly can't rank Maximum Security until we see him come back, because there's just so much we don't know about that horse when he's a genuine horse. But I hope that he'll come back and he'll put something together, because he's had a lot to deal with just as a racehorse. And if he can run anything like he did in the Saudi Cup, he's going to be just fine in this division.
All right, so I understand you have to get going. Thanks for dropping by. But before you go, is there anything else that we have not covered yet? Or if there is anything else that we have not covered yet, and you want to mention that before you head out, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple things before I go. The first being the fantasy winner, skydivers, potentially being pointed towards the 1,000 Guineas in Europe, and I would be super intrigued to see her there. I think that'd be a lot of fun. That's just something I wanted to touch on. Another thing that I just want to talk a little bit about yesterday's races, just the fantasy really, is that I think a lot of those horses you're going to be able to make a case for next time out. British Idiom, she had a nightmare trip. Harvey's Little Goyle had a nightmare trip. So many of those fillies just got the worst of trips. The race was really over after the first turn, and I think there's a lot of things we could see from those horses going down the road. In any kind of circumstance, it was a rough race, plain and simple. And then the last thing, I've seen a lot of debate about who they thought was more impressive today, Nadal or Charlatan, and I think that for me personally, for Charlatan to do what he did, I understand the competition was weak, but he just flat out was extremely quick today. His fractions were so quick, and Martin Garcia said he didn't even realize it. He said the horse was galloping along so easily that it didn't even look like he was going fast, and he still went 46 for the half mile, and he won with, I guarantee he had something left in the take. I don't think distance is going to be an issue. I think Speightstown is too often considered a sprinter sire when he sired multiple horses that have won at a mile and an eighth, a mile and a quarter. He has the ability, especially with a dam who is pretty good going long distances on the dirt. So I think that Charlatan, for me at least, going forward, I rank him above Nadal. There's only one horse I rank above both of them. Those two are second and third for me. I still think Tiz the Law is the horse to beat in this division. Looking at what he's done, looking at who he's beat, I just think that Tiz the Law for me is still the horse to beat in this crop. But obviously, we'll find that out sooner than later who the best is. But I think my main point is this is a super deep 3-year-old division. I am so excited for the prep season that's about to ensue whenever the Triple Crown races may be slotted. I know we're going to have insanely deep and talented fields from all parts of the country, especially the Baffert duo, even Authentic, the third horse. He's going to, one thing I have I'm going to go on a quick tangent before I have to go. There are rumors that the Belmont might be run at 9 furlongs, which at Belmont Park would be a 1-turn race. And I just can't imagine what it'd be like to see Authentic going 1 1/8 in a 1-turn race, being able to flaunt his speed. That would be something to see. So I think that my point is this is such a deep group. I think Baffert has the stranglehold on it, but Tiz the Law it's still the best horse in this division.
All right, so if you have to get going, thanks for stopping by, for taking a couple minutes out to run by here, and I will catch up with the chat on here in a minute and hit on some of the things that people were typing in before we got on this tangent. So thanks. You can catch him back on. We will be later on this week. We're going to be recapping all of this weekend as well as picking up with Hall of Fame action. That will be Wednesday. So once again, thanks for stopping by, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack.
All right, so yeah, I will catch up with the chat. I saw people typing stuff in. I didn't want to cut Eric off mid things, and I will also say if anyone has anyone wants to talk about the Hall of Fame stuff, I have not streamed since the Hall of Fame finalists came out. The results will be out this week, so we will see of all the candidates that have been nominated. We will see who has been elected to the Hall of Fame. But from that. I will go back up here. Yeah, here's the thing I'll say about King Guillermo. This is his first race back from the Tampa Bay Derby where he was an almost 50-1 long shot. That horse is for real. I know that, you can say what you want about Nadal being superior than him. That is what it is. I still, Nadal obviously better. I don't think there was any person or many people coming into this race that were saying that King Guillermo was better than Nadal, but that's a horse that can run. The 50-1 was an overlay at Tampa Bay. Obviously, he's come back, run second. Both Eric and I had our doubts about him being able to handle what we thought was going to be a tough pace, but like Eric mentioned, they were able to get him to rate, and that was the factor for success with him. Wells Bayou went out there and that's the running style with him. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Florent Geroux screwed the race up. That was the running style of the horse. And, you do your best. You hope that you didn't go that fast. I just thought that you were going to swap Nadal and King Guillermo. And he was going to be up in the position that Nadal was in, and Nadal was going to be rating a little bit more. But regardless of that, he is a really nice horse. The top 3 horses from that, or the top 4 horses from that Arkansas Derby division were really good horses, all in their own right. Obviously Nadal's better than the other 3, but Nadal, King Guillermo, and then Finnick the Fierce and Farmington Road, those 4 are all really good horses. So it's really worth mentioning that there were some overlays, but by and large, Nadal and King Guillermo are 2 really good horses. Obviously, Nadal significantly better. And the question that is going to be asked with Charlatan is he as good as we would think of a horse of this caliber? And I would say, I made the comment after his allowance race that, I wasn't necessarily comparing him to Justify, but he and Justify were at the exact same positions in their career that they in their respective careers when Charlatan won that allowance race. And I will continue saying that they're in the exact same point. And Charlatan has shown right there that, you can mention the fact that he was in the weaker of the 2 divisions. Charlatan, I'm not going to discount him. He was just better than everyone else in that race. I believe Charlatan might have been a little bit faster. I don't know. I can check on this right now, but I'm not sure. I haven't really seen a final of the race, but of the 2, Nadal, Charlatan, you can argue all day over which one was more impressive. I'd lean a little bit more to Nadal, very, very slightly to Nadal, just because the fact that he had to rate off the pace, and it was a bit of a run that he had to deal with, especially with the fact that he was with Wells Bayou. He wasn't like neck and neck with him, but he was sitting just off of Wells Bayou for that entire race. So for the record, Nadal won 48.34, and Charlatan in his Arkansas Derby division, it was, hold on a second, let me pull up his Equibase right here. But regardless of the fact, those two, I know someone mentioned in the chat up there, Bob Baffert and Monopoly. What else is new? Bob Baffert, whatever race is being run on the first Saturday in May, he had 3 horses running at Oaklawn Park today, 3 for 3, big day for him. He and their connections decided to scratch out Impul and prep for some races in California. I think that was probably the better decision. But and that's the question. If Charlatan can rate, then Charlatan very well will be one of, if not the top horses in this division. And Nadal was a tick faster. Charlatan won 48.49. Nadal won 48.34. So these two horses really good. The top 3 on this Kentucky Derby field: Nadal, Charlatan, and Tiz the Law. It's going to be an entertaining whatever race is next on the prep seed. And I know some people are probably going to ask the question whether or not you type it on here. From the people that I've talked to, Churchill, from this point, we still have no idea what the refined Kentucky Derby prep season is going to look like, with what new races are going to show up. So from this moment, from the people that I've talked to, no one knows what Churchill's going to do. Obviously, Churchill's going to have to come out with that sooner rather than later, so that horsemen can figure out what their schedule is going to be. Yeah, obviously the Santa Anita Derby, they're going to run that, whether or not the government consents to them reopening. Well, they haven't reopened yet. The reopening is contingent upon health department approval, and we don't know whether or not the health department is going to approve it, but they're just assuming that they're going to get approved. And I'm being led to believe, not that people are telling me this, but just from the indication of how serious they are about restarting racing, that if they aren't allowed to restart racing, that they will take legal action, and that will be determined in a court. But regardless of that, Santa Anita Derby will be run. Wood Memorial, whether or not I had not actually heard that yet, but I don't doubt that those rumors about the Belmont are being said. NYRA might decide to scrub the Wood Memorial and just go with the Belmont Stakes. Now, what that does for the Triple Crown, I don't know. I don't think that NYRA is going to say we're just going to do. I don't think they're going to swap out the Triple Crown races. I mean, if it might lead to the situation of we don't have a Triple Crown this year. And I've been under the impression that I don't want to necessarily have a Triple Crown winner this year, because I don't want to have the asterisks that are going to come with a potential Triple Crown winner this year. But aside from that, you mentioned the Santa Anita Derby. Obviously, Los Alamitos. Santa Anita is going to get a lot of horses in that race. Los Alamitos might be able to take some of the defectors from that race. And depending on what happens with Santa Anita and with Los Alamitos, you could see things pushed around there. And then, as Eric and I were talking about with some of the other horses like a Game Winner, like a Maximum Security, and things like that, or other horses like that, those prep races they're not really prep races for the Breeders' Cup Classic, but those 9.5, 10 furlong races, mile and eighth, mile and a quarter, handicap races out in California, be it the Gold Cup, the San Diego Handicap, and the Pacific Classic. Those races are all going to be, the Pacific Classic is always a big determining factor in the year. The Gold Cup at Santa Anita has kind of gone down a little bit since Hollywood Park closed, and just kind of became a second stakes race at Santa Anita. But that's going to have a lot of entries in it this year, and you'll obviously see horses that aren't ready for that be able to go in races like the San Diego and later down the line the Pacific Classic. That's a good point you bring up with the virtual Kentucky Derby. I wasn't really, we didn't talk about the virtual Kentucky Derby on the show. That's not because I didn't think it was a cool idea. I just, it's an algorithm, and I think, we can debate this all we want. Obviously, Secretariat won. the horse that everyone would expect to win this did win the race, but it was an algorithm, and I wasn't really super pumped for it. I mean, I watched the race, obviously, but the fact that, it was an algorithm and could have potentially have had a opportunity, could have potentially had a circumstance where horses that you would have expected not to win ended up winning. I'm glad that Secretariat did take the win in that, but I wasn't really the biggest fan of the algorithm with that. So that's why, but I will acknowledge that on here. Secretariat, now you can say Secretariat's the best of the 13 Triple Crown winners. I didn't need an algorithm to tell me that, but aside from that, really good weekend. A lot of last good weekend of horse racing for a couple weeks. We don't really know what's going to be going on with the uncertainties of the time. Churchill's going to reopen on the 11th of May, so we will see some horses like Monomoy Girl. Brad Cox said she is coming back for a race in Churchill, and you can also see, you can also bank on seeing a horse like Tom Seta. I know we talked about him. The connections of that horse said they were going to be going to the Stephen Foster, or they didn't say the Stephen Foster, but they said to Churchill, or they said to Churchill. I'm just assuming the Stephen Foster. That's the big race at Churchill Downs for the older horses out there. So you can definitely most likely take that to the bank that horse is going to run. But aside from the big stakes races at Oaklawn Park, you feel like Monomoy Girl should be retired? I don't know. If she has, bring her back. If she can run well, then why? Like, if she still has stuff left in the tank, why not? If you run her back and she doesn't run well, then obviously that happens. But I don't see why not. If she's got something left in the tank, give her the opportunity to show you that she doesn't have something left in the tank. Oh, well, that's actually interesting. I just got the official order of finish with this official Triple Crown race. So if anyone didn't actually see the official order, it was Secretariat, Citation, Seattle Slew, Affirmed, American Pharaoh, Whirlaway, Count Fleet, Justified, Assault, War Admiral, Omaha, Gallant Fox, Sir Barton. Algorithm, I think the algorithm did a decent enough job. I'm not the hugest fan of how the race was run, but I'm not really going to nitpick that. But getting back to that, Monomoy Girl, give her the opportunity to come back. If she can run, then give her the opportunity to. And if she has left her best races as a 3-year-old, then, then that would be time to make that decision. But I think it's too early to say that. Yes, Maximum Security is back in training, and I will say from the pictures that have come out of him, he does look really well. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty surrounding him with the whole situation surrounding his trainer, Jason Service. I'm going to echo what Eric said. I would hope that the horse is able to come back and have a good year, because the horse deserves it for all he's been through with the disqualification and the fact that he nearly colicked and, the stuff that he had toward the end of his 3-year-old campaign. So I would love to see him be able to come back and run a solid race, or have a solid rest of his career. He kind of almost needs that, especially with the amount that Michael Tabor and Coolmore were decided to fork out for his stud rights. He's going to have to run with some kind of success in order to make that worth it. Now, that might also give us the opportunity that we see a 5-year-old Maximum Security. I'm not speaking from any inside knowledge on anything, just speculating on that there's a possibility we could see that. Especially with the fact that you need to have especially with the fact that they want that money that they paid for Maximum Security to end up being worth it. And for that, you need to have him have been able to do something on the racetrack. Because with his current resume, people are not going to breed him. But looking at some, and I know you did mention, I know someone mentioned about Network Effect. Nice race by him down at Gulfstream. Just a nice day of racing all along at Oaklawn. Again, I mentioned the number 2 horse Scolding in the number 2 race at Oaklawn. The Billy Scolding, a really nice horse. If they, depending on where they go with her, if they do decide to go to the test, if they go elsewhere with her, obviously it remains to be seen. But she's got some talent. And also some other horses, endorsed first-time starter for Bill Mott. Probably, I think the Oaklawn handicap would have been a little bit too much for him first time out, or little too much to ask first time out. They went with a little bit more modest goal, got that win in the allowance race. Now they need to see if he's going to be able to replicate that in a stakes race. But aside from that, Bankett ran a really nice race. Long Range Toddy was solid. I know Long Range Toddy runs well at Oaklawn, but from what we've seen, Long Range Toddy definitely not that good. Not great, but like I mentioned earlier, those three, and then handicapped horses like By My Standards, like Warriors Charge, like Tacitus, all those horses. So if anyone has any thoughts on anything they'd like to drop into the comments about any of the races this weekend, I will take some stuff like that. I don't want to talk too much on here because I don't want to echo too much of what we're going to say on the podcast coming up this week. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame. I know I'm still working on getting all the Hall of Fame videos out for you guys. So that will be finished hopefully by Monday. But if anyone has anything they'd like to drop it in the comments now, I invite you to today while I transition into talking about the Hall of Fame. And you can also say stuff about the Hall of Fame if you want to get into talking about that as well. So let me just get the 2020 Hall of Fame ballot up there. Now I will say we had Jay on. My connection's dropping out. Something I'll say about Blind Luck. I did the Blind Luck video last year. Eric did the Blind Luck one this year. Hold on a second. I do apologize if my connection is iffy. There we go. The message went away. Here's the thing I'll say about Blind Luck. She ran some nice races, but I wouldn't necessarily say she's a Hall of Famer. She beat her rival Havre de Grace a couple of times. And that video is actually currently uploading. So then Eric did that one. So you can check that out after this live show, or whenever that finishes uploading and I'm able to share it live. But I really think the only sure Hall of Famers this year, the only sure Hall of Famer is Wise Dan. I think Kona Gold should be a Hall of Famer. I think Rags to Riches should be a Hall of Famer. And I think trainers Doug O'Neill, Bid Whiteley should be Hall of Famers, and jockey Corey Nakatani. But Blind Luck, I think she's Hall of Very Good. She ran some nice races, but aside from the Kentucky Oaks, didn't have a signature win in the Breeders' Cup. And I'll mention Havre de Grace. I also think with her, another horse Hall of Very Good. She ran in a very weak year, even though she was Horse of the Year. Not really super interested in Havre de Grace. I think that she, I don't think that she was the best in her career, and I think she benefited from running in a very weak 2012 year with a lot of weak older male horses and not really anything super spectacular. And like I mentioned, if anyone else has anything else to get on here, I will mention some of my other points about trainers. I said about trainers at Christophe Clement and Mark Casse last year. I would need to see a little bit more from them. I got that a little bit more from Mark Casse. Not sure if it's going to be enough in the voters' eyes to put him up. I'd vote for him now. I asked for more. I got more. But Mark Casse, I think Christophe Clement needs to do a little bit more. And then, like I mentioned, Hall of Famer, but later on down the road, I don't think he's an immediate Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any other standout horses from this weekend. I'll open it up to for a couple more minutes. I know this is going to kind of be a little bit of a brief show tonight. Normally, I do like to go over an hour, but since I do have a majority of videos to get out, I am going to have to cut this short a little bit. But if anyone has any last minute stuff they want to drop in, I'll leave it open for another couple of minutes and we'll talk about that. And hopefully we won't have too long between now and the next live show. Like I mentioned, this coming week on the podcast, we're going to be talking Hall of Fame, everything from this past weekend. And maybe we'll get, and obviously I did mention me of Diane Crump, maybe we'll get some more stuff. No, I don't think Bob Baffert's going to leave California racing. I think Bob Baffert's just saying that. I don't think it's going to get to the point where he's going to have to. I think it's going to get reopened one way or the other. The health department relents, or whether Santa Anita, or whether the Stronach Group, I should say, does decide to take legal action. But either way, I don't think he's leaving California. And then like I also mentioned, we're we're working to see if we're going to have other stuff this week. I'm not really sure if that's going to happen, but again, like I mentioned, I'll open it up another minute or so if anyone else has anything that they'd like to drop in here. And, like I mentioned, if you haven't followed us on social media yet, you can go follow our Twitter, Rundown Racing. And if you haven't subscribed already, appreciate a subscription. And we will be back. Unfortunately, we don't have the next couple of weeks is the last really big week in the stakes. But it was an enjoyable weekend. Decent cut the way that we normally have it. But what are you going to do? So we'll be ready for the Kentucky Derby when it's in September. And with all that being said, I think that's about it. Again, I do apologize. I do have some work I have to do with some of the Hall of Fame videos. Tried to stagger them a little bit, didn't necessarily work out. Ran out of time. Got to get them all out before Wednesday. I'm trying to get everything out before Tuesday to give people an opportunity to watch it, but definitely we'll have everything by Wednesday. So appreciate it. Again, I'll leave it open just another couple of minutes, just another minute if you have any last minute point you want to drop in here. But aside from that, thanks for stopping by. Hope you have a good weekend and stay well during this time. So yeah, I think we're going to call it now. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you hopefully sooner rather than later. Have a good rest of your weekend.